Well, everybody should know how legally to use the material that they find online. And the idea of rights statements was to give the vocabulary in order to do that to the cultural heritage institutions, so to the libraries, the archives, the audiovisual collections, that they can apply these rights statements that tell the user what they can do with that material online. So as a student, you would then be able to know that this material can be used for education, or it can be used as an out of commerce, out of copyright work, that kind of thing. It doesn't mean as a student, if you're a student that's publishing, you should then be using, as an individual, you should be using the Creative Commons licenses and use those to attribute your work. This is for the material that is coming from the cultural heritage institutions that doesn't fall under one of those licenses, so it needs its own set of licenses in order to work. And we set this up because we want to make this work across the world. We're now in a very digital world, a world that needs to be able to extract this material online. Students anywhere can access anything from anywhere across the world. So you need to be able to know, can you, and what can you do with that when you've received it. Europeana started in 2007, which means that we've actually got quite a lot of legacy technologies in place. So if I look at what NDL is now doing, you think, oh yeah, okay, that would be great. And they can leapfrog a lot of the stuff that we've got in place. So I think we can learn on a technological level from each other. I think we can learn on the specifics of how do you deal with language, how do you deal with the links between things and making a material work, so you can find the Sanskrit treatise plus the manuscript plus the painting that was expressed by the Mughals, that kind of thing, and you can find it all together. So I think we can seriously learn from each other. I'd also actually like to do a joint project together if we could. So one of my favourite projects is something called Europeana 1914-1918, and it collects the material from people's houses of their relatives who were in the First World War. And I think the combination of the material that would come out of India plus the material that can come from Europe would be absolutely phenomenal, and you're engaging a different generation actually in the internet and sharing their material and in history. So I would love to do something like that with the National Digital Library of India. We've got a lot of art material, a lot of music material, sport, fashion, which is different to the kind of content that's in the National Digital Library of India. For the sports, fashion material, or things that we put out into something like Wikipedia or Pinterest or Facebook, that tends to be a younger audience, but younger, 25 to 40. For the 1914-1918 material, it's the 50s, 60s, 70 age groups, which is a very, very different dynamic. And then it just depends where we put the material in the first place. So we don't expect everybody to come to us. We actually make sure that the API will work in education, in research, for the creative industries. So then whatever the groups are for those is what the audience dynamic is. So the fact that you have an API means that it can work in very specifically in education systems or tools or research tools. It can be placed into things like Wikipedia. It can be placed into, as we said, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of these different places where people go to extract information. So it's what's in their workflows, and I think that's the trick that we have discovered. Use the places that people are already going rather than try to make yourself all things to all men. So I think the good thing about the NDL, the National Digital Library of India, is that they are focusing on one area. It means you're more likely to succeed, actually, that you're being focused on it, and then you can add the other things in. It might mean that the audience is not so diverse. and maybe the danger is it will become a bit elitist. I mean, the advantage of things like images and sound and film and all that kind of thing is that it appeals to all sorts of people on all sorts of levels, and I think if you want to draw people into the other material, then it's one of the ways to go. I think probably the biggest lesson that I have learnt is it's great to have the vision. You need the big vision. You need to know this is why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, but you need to do it in small steps. So it's the think big, start small, and actually I think the way the National Digital Library of India is going about, let's start with education, let's get this right first, and that's a big enough challenge, as we know. I think it's a very, very, very positive way to go.